Okay, so I know it feels like gaming is at a real low point and everything's falling apart at the seams. Massive flops, a drop in quality, unsustainable development costs, price increases. Like, there's a lot of things I could say about this industry that we can all agree just make you want to tear your hair out. And you've seen all the videos out there saying that AAA is getting worse and it feels like we're heading for another video game crash. And yeah, when you're as plugged into gaming as I am, that's kind of what it feels like at times. It's no secret that the big boys are having a lot of trouble right now, and we as the players are getting less in return. Couple that with certain companies starting the push for $80 games, and it's not hard to feel like we're gonna be in for a rough time in the years to come. But that's not what we're here to talk about. While it's true that AAA seems to be getting worse, what's seemingly getting lost is that over the past 2 years now, we have seen a ridiculous rise in the quality of AA and indie games. And I don't just mean games that get high critic scores and then nobody talks about again. I mean games that might as well be AAA. That's how good they are. And games that are legitimate financial successes. All doing it while avoiding many of the problems that have been plaguing the AAA space, essentially posing the question, what's your excuse? There have been so many of these games that I've played lately that I cannot help but think, despite all the issues that have been going on with the industry and all the potential problems, I truly believe that gaming is gonna be fine. But why specifically do I think that? And what, if anything, can the industry learn from what's been happening? Well, sit down everyone, class is in session. So strap in boys and girls, and let's get down to business. So before we get to the good, we first have to establish the problem to put everything here into context. As you know, the industry has been plagued by problems when it comes to corporate mismanagement, unsustainable development costs, massive flops, layoffs, you get it. You've seen all the videos out there. I got nothing more to contribute to that conversation. That's already been spoken about. But why people have started recently talking about a potential crash, and what was the first step in prompting me to make this video, is the recent price increases, specifically for games. $80 games. What the fuck? A few weeks ago, Nintendo and Xbox became the first to announce that select games will be priced at $80. Yeah, good old Mario is sending Boo to steal your star, you scummy money-hungry company. And it's only a matter of time before other studios follow suit. I'm telling you right now, if you don't think this is going to have a negative impact, you haven't been paying attention. The reason why this is a problem is because the more you raise your price, the more customers you scare away. Simple economics, right? Well, then you take into account that the fact that the world economy is still recovering, there's not a lot of disposable income right now, especially in the US, on top of the fact that games just went from $60 to $70 a few years ago. So this jump is a punch to the gut for most people. $20 more, and that's $100. You know who has that perspective? Consumers. I saw this market research report last week done by this group Epilion, and in it they showed that the share of population in the US that plays video games is down from pre-COVID levels, but the average hours played is up, while monthly spending has flatlined. So less people buying games, but the ones who are playing for longer, not increasing their spending. This tells me that a lot less gamers are buying new games and they're focusing more on their backlogs. Wait, what's that? PC gamers spend 92% of their time on older games? Holy shit, I'm right! And you know there's a couple factors given in the report like increased social media use, pandemic gains leveling out, the market essentially peaking, but nobody mentions the rising cost of games. If the amount of gamers is less than pre-COVID levels, and the ones who are here are spending most of their times on old games, oh, and growth has decreased by 13% since 2021, does anybody remember what happened in 2021? I mean, I'm just some guy on the internet, but I know smoke when I see it. Gaming didn't get less interesting, it got more expensive, both for developers and us. And so you see people giving up gaming to focus on other things. And that's at $70. If you raise that to $80 after you just raised it to $70 in this economy, you better clench your assholes.
Want to know a secret? I have no idea what I'm doing. And I don't think anyone else does either.
There are some guys that could get away with it. Could. Namely, Nintendo and Rockstar, which is why those bastards did it in the first place. But if you're someone like Ubisoft, you're not getting away with this. Bethesda? Hell no. Even guys like Capcom, I don't think will be able to avoid this damage if they do that, especially after your last two games. What in the goddamn hell was that PC port, Monster Hunter? You want to ensure your casual player base is halved? This is how you do it. And you know who knows that? EA.
What?
Yes, the original scummy money hungry company said recently that they will not raise their games to $80. As of right now, trusting EA is like trusting a bear trap won't go off if you stick your hand in it. But the guys who had a microtransaction controversy so big that Congress got involved is saying this. Now, do you think that's because these guys suddenly became pro-consumer after all these years? Or is it because the majority of their money comes from sports games, which are only played by casual players, and they know that once they raise that price, those guys are going away? Yeah, they could spend that much in Ultimate Team anyway, but it doesn't have the same sticker shock that this would. 7 years ago, that would have been the price of the deluxe edition of Madden. They already had problems with FC 25 not meeting expectations. You think they want to add this to the mix? But I expect a lot of AAA companies to take this price increase, and I do think it will go bad for them. Yeah, I kind of lied in the title. Not all of gaming is going to be fine. The ones who take this increase, apart from a select few, are gonna suffer. Now, this sounds like a lot of woo, but I wasn't fully lying in the title, because there will also be some wee, and that is a gigantic hole that is gonna be ready to be filled. And once it's filled, you'll start to realize those little guys aren't so little anymore. We have been seeing an unprecedented rise in the quality of AA and indie games over the last 2 years. Baldur's Gate 3, Helldivers 2, Space Marine 2, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Split Fiction, Expedition 33. These are games from smaller teams and smaller budgets than the big boys, but are managing to consistently outperform them in every aspect when it comes to quality. These may be AA games, but they feel like AAA in every aspect, better than bigger games released today. They look better graphically, have more interesting mechanics, they're more fun to play, they have better stories, better writing. 3 of those games I mentioned are legitimately some of the greatest games I've ever played. Baldur's Gate 3 literally got other developers to worry that it may set unrealistic expectations for games going forward, and then every one of these games have come out and consistently taken turns pieing that argument in the face, with KCD2 being the one that, in my opinion, put it out of its misery. I've said in the past that certain games were wake-up calls for the industry, namely for Baldur's Gate 3 and Helldivers 2 if we're sticking to these type of games that I'm mentioning right now, but any one of these other games can easily be classified as wake-up calls, and examples of AAA being absolutely embarrassed, especially recently with KCD2 and Expedition 33. And then you include the debut titles from the East, Lies of P, Pal World, Stellar Blade, and Black Myth Wukong, which was my game of the year last year, and you're starting to see a complete takeover in what gamers consider the best games on the market. And the best part about this is now these games are also competing and succeeding financially. How many copies sold banners have you seen on Twitter from these guys? Like almost every week. None of that X amount of players bullshit that nobody can verify. Oh, hi, AC Shadows. It seems like every one of these games is finding massive success. Look at that Black Myth number. And then you look at the indie scene with games like Balatro, Blueprints, Repo, Schedule 1. These are not your indies from back in the day where it was like, oh, this little pixel game is so good. I had so much fun. What a cute little game. Yeah, what time we getting on Black Ops? These are games that are demanding your time and respect. Everybody and their mother had their lives taken over by Balatro last year. My friend still plays it on his phone. Hey, get back to work, Riley. You look at peak player count numbers on Steam for Repo and Schedule 1, and they were larger than a lot of big games this year, and they also sold incredibly well for games of their size. I mean, Schedule 1 is a cozy game where you sell drugs, and it's sold 5 million copies up to this point, despite that bullshit lawsuit. You know how crazy that is? That should be a game you see on Steam for like $2 most years, but that's how captivating it was to players. Still gotta play it though. Cozy games really aren't my style. That's why it's taking me so long to get it.
Get over it!
And in the case of Blueprints, even though it's reportedly not selling as well, the people who are playing it can't stop playing it, and critics absolutely adore it. So you look at all these games between AA and indie and how every single one of them is being received, it seems like a constant flow of incredible games. It's gotten to the point where these guys aren't just eating AAA's lunch, they're cleaning out their cabinets and then having sex with their mom right in front of them. And it's not gonna stop either. Have you seen that game Hell Is Us coming out later this year? That looks great. Tides of Annihilation? That looks like it's gonna be awesome. Shadowheart is also in that one. Dude, you want a good game? Just hire Jennifer English to voice someone. I mean, she's a good luck charm at this point. It's not gonna stop because these games now have a bigger platform than ever to get their game out there, and the tools they have now put them on the same level as the big boys. So the big question that has to be asked is, how is this happening? How are these smaller teams making better games with less resources? Well, let's compare them with AAA. Like I said in the beginning, AAA budgets for game development have gotten ridiculously high. You look at games costing $200 to $300 million, $400 in the case of Concord. Jesus Christ! There's a reason why people across the industry have said that this type of spending is unsustainable. But the common thought until recently has been, well, this is the state of gaming, that this is how it has to be. But then you look at the budgets for these smaller games, and you see these things made for $40 million, $50 million, $100 million in the case of Baldur's Gate 3, which is still a lot of money, but nowhere near these other massive budgets. And then when you see that these games are better, it's hard not to look at these crazy numbers and think that a lot of this is just irresponsible spending, if not just outright money laundering at times. Instead of being happy with a few million copies sold, now you need to sell gangbusters just to break even. And then you wonder why the monetization on some of these games are bad, because base game sales are not enough for them. But these smaller studios don't have to worry about selling crazy numbers because they scope their games properly and know where to put their funding, so when they sell a few million, that's considered a massive success. They're not devoting a ton of resources to make the game look as realistic as they can, with pores and peach fuzz on characters' faces and dew on grass and other meaningless shit like that. Unreal Engine 5 looks like it's working wonders right now for these teams, so the work looks like it's halfway completed by the time you start polishing these things out. Take two games right now. Spider-Man 2, made with a budget of $300 million, and Black Myth Wukong, with a budget of $40 million. Now, I know other things went into Spider-Man, like the seamless transitions and no load times, but when I look at Wukong, I think it blows it out of the water when it comes to presentation, and it was made for so much less. Hell, you might think these bigger players don't know how these small guys do it, but they do. They do already know. Case in point, Ghost of Tsushima. That's a AAA game under PlayStation. In my opinion, the best PlayStation game that's been put out in the last decade. One of the most beautiful and immersive games I've ever played. $60 million. So it's not foreign to you. What the hell is happening here? And most of these smaller games focus more on art style and immersion anyway. Helldivers, Space Marine, Expedition 33. Look at this battle happening in front of me and I jizz in my pants. Now, this type of budgeting doesn't always mean you're gonna get better games. A perfect example of this is Obsidian. These guys are known for acting like a AA studio. Whether or not you actually classify them as one is up to you. They have taken on low budget projects for their last few games, but the problem is when they scope their games, they either make games that they're not known for, that nobody asked for, or they sacrifice quality for it. Just look at what they did with Avowed. In an effort to be more sustainable, they end up making their games more forgettable. It's less properly scoping and more cutting back on costs. These other guys aren't sacrificing fun factor when they do this. In fact, they're the most fun games you can play right now. The other problem is that a lot of these bigger players have even bigger problems with corporate mismanagement. Whether it's executives not knowing their ass from their elbow, or developers having to go through every hoop on the planet to try and get something approved. Do I even need to pull up Jason Schreier's Anthem expose? Like, when you get to a point as a studio where all of your workers are constantly on YouTube because they're waiting for a directive from management, you know something is wrong. By the way, how's Beyond Good and Evil 2 coming along, Ubisoft?
You've been at this for far too long, with far too little success.
Or the higher-ups are forcing the developers to make games that they don't want to, aka almost every live service game failed over the last 5 years. You look at those and every Ubisoft game released in the last 5 years, and you could just feel the developers' talent is being wasted because they all feel soulless. Games made to meet a quota. It never feels like the developers want to make these games, more like they're forced to, and sometimes they don't even know how to make it. Oh, Arcane Austin, you guys made Dishonored. Well, here's Redfall, have fun!
It can be done exactly how I want it. The only question is, are you the man to do it? Figure it out.
But with AA, and especially indie, they always feel like they make their games with a clear vision, and that shows up in the final product. There hasn't been a single one of these games I've played recently that doesn't feel like the devs were all on the same page and had fun coming up with these ideas. They're filled with so much passion that you actually start rooting for them to succeed, which is where power of word of mouth comes into play. AA and indie don't need massive marketing budgets because they know if they make a great game, they're going to have players talking about it and telling their friends to play it. Case in point, Expedition 33. Look at the player count numbers on Steam for launch. Around 52,000, then it slowly rises to 71,000, and then eventually reaches its peak of 145,000 concurrent players. That is word of mouth. That is people hearing that it is one of the greatest games ever made, and then they play it, and then they tell other people to play it, and then they actually start rooting for Sandfall Interactive because this 30-person team gave them something that their supposed heroes couldn't, and then it snowballs into massive success for them. Well-deserved success. I just made a video on it. It's phenomenal. I love it. Play the game. Do it. And these guys don't have to worry about publisher influence and demands. This one shocked me. In an interview with Hazelight CEO Joseph Ferris, the f***ing boy,
we fuck shit up without fucking up.
He said that while making Split Fiction, EA never even touched them. Mostly because they're not actually owned by EA, they're more like partners. But even still, that's wild to me. But then you have the other side of mismanagement, where everything developers want to add has to go through every single department for approval, and who knows how long that can take. This has famously been the core development problem with places like Bethesda, you know, along with ignoring criticism and the creation engine being old enough to apply for AARP, where every single decision has to go through Todd Howard, who wasn't always at the studio on certain days, which made things go so much slower. And I think the quality of Starfield speaks to how that turned out. Stuff like this just isn't necessary, and it leads to a lot of wasted time and resources, and it makes you wonder if these massive teams even need to be this big in the first place, which leads to the conversation of layoffs, and that's a whole nother can of worms. But these smaller studios don't operate like that. They seem like places that foster creativity through freedom. I will hereby prove it. If these guys had to go through various levels of management and approval, would you be able to f a bear in Baldur's Gate? That's not getting past the first level of management. If they had this structure, would you have the part in KCD 2 where you search for a dead body in literal shit?
Oh, God. It's hairy. It's still warm.
Or would Brenda and HR say, we can't have that in here because it can be seen as a form of hazing and it looks very humiliating to some of our fans. If this structure was in place, would you be able to play volleyball in Expedition 33 with baby gestrels as the balls? Oh, we can't have that. That's depicting a form of child abuse, and we would lose a lot of money and get a ton of blowback on Twitter from our our fans if we put that in. They're art mannequins, Brenda. AA doesn't have to worry about higher-ups breathing down their necks, so they could do whatever they want with their games. And you know what? Sometimes that can make for some viral moments, controversial moments. You've never seen a safe game go viral, and these guys know that. Which leads me to the ultimate kicker of this entire situation. You know those price increases that AAA has? How they raised it to 70 and most are starting to raise it to 80? And apparently that's the norm now? Not with these guys. Most of these games are priced at $60. Now that's not charity, that's not them being nice, that just used to be the standard price for video games because these guys are not well known as some other big AAA developers, and in their eyes, they haven't earned your loyalty yet, so why should they pay top dollar for your game when they don't even know what you are? But then, there's the games that are sold for $50, $40, $30, $20. Those last two are more indie, but Expedition 33 and Helldivers 2 being $50 and $40 and selling extremely well shows that this competitive pricing works wonders and gets your game in front of more people and then lets word of mouth take it from there. This is not just a pricing strategy, it's a gesture of goodwill, and that's how players see it. And with so many anti-consumer practices in the industry today, you bet your ass players are going to latch onto that, especially if the games are all-timers. And it doesn't look like it's impacting how much of their budget they're making back. You look at KCD 2 and they made their budget back in the first day. The only small game that I mentioned in this video that was $70 was Stellar Blade. Everything else was less. So this type of practice does work. The bigger boys just don't want to do it because it looks bad for the higher-ups. So now that $1,000,000 question. ZD, how is gaming gonna be fine? Well, if we're talking literally, I mean gamers. Like, we're gonna be fine. We have a ton of great content to choose from, but you might see some downward trends overall if you're looking at a fancy industry graph. But if we look big picture, when you take everything here into account, then the way I see things, it goes a little something like this. A lot of AAA studios will implement that $80 price increase for games, and I do believe when they do, they are going to suffer, especially with the type of quality that's been put out recently. Maybe a handful will do fine, but overall, not good. Meanwhile, AA and indie will keep making great games, garnering more and more fans, while keeping their competitive pricing strategy, and because gamers will be more stingy with their spending, they need somebody who's gonna meet them in the middle. Turns out, there are many people who will not only meet them in the middle, but provide them with a better experience than the more expensive games. As this goes on, AAA is gonna struggle while the smaller guys rise up. Eventually, it's gonna get to a point where the big studios have no choice but to take a look at what's happening with these games and ask, okay, what are they doing that we're not? How do these games look and play the way they do for only $40 million and dominate discourse and get so much love while we're dropping an entire bank on our game and it's barely making a profit and people are forgetting about it as soon as they finish? You know all those problems we've been seemingly hearing about internally among our teams? Maybe we should start listening? Maybe we should try and change some things? Whatever reevaluation entails for these guys, there will be some changes made because it's easy to brush an incredible game off as an anomaly, even 2 games as an anomaly. But when there's this many high quality and masterpiece games coming from these smaller studios, all succeeding financially and getting players to drool over them while you're struggling to break even, eventually you gotta realize you're doing something wrong. And hey, should we even be pricing our games this high? And I know what you'll say, ZD, you think that big corporations are gonna lower prices on their products? That'll be the day, right? And it's true, once big companies raise their prices, very rarely will they lower them. Until it hits their bank accounts. If there's anything that companies hate, it's losing money and getting embarrassed. And if it's proven that raising prices to $80 is actually hurting us and making our fans leave, we have no choice but to lower it. No matter how many microtransactions you may add to try and compensate, it's not gonna work because you won't even have the players to anchor you. Maybe this is all a pipe dream, maybe this alternative happens and people buy the games anyway and we eventually work our way to $90. Please God intervene for us if that happens. But in this economy, I don't think players are going to sit down and take it anymore, especially if they're not as heavily invested in games as someone like you and me. And I haven't even brought up piracy. I'm not saying we're headed for a golden age, but I do think that we're going to avoid a crash. And I have a feeling we're going to come out of this even better than before. And that is why gaming is going to be fine. So, that's all from me. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Maybe take some stuff away from this, or hey, maybe you didn't. That's fine too. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace!